Predators Official Podcast here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming on YouTube and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Brooks Bratton of NashvillePredators.com, joined by my friends Max Hurst from Preds Radio and Kara Hammer from Preds TV. Coming to you for the final episode of January. We're almost into February. We're almost at the Olympic break, but not yet. Still some important hockey to be played. The Preds in the midst of this road trip out east. They're getting points in overtime as they try to win the week here. We'll look back at Roman Josi's 1,000th NHL game and the celebration that followed. We'll have an interview with Luke Evangelista, a fan favorite, to talk about his game and some of his favorite teammates this season. Fedor Svechkov sent down to Milwaukee. What does all that mean? Plus our Biggie Awesome Person of the Week and a couple of mailbag questions to get to first. But Max, here we are on this current road trip as we record this on Friday, January 30th on Long Island. The Preds have already played 2 games and the same result, an overtime loss in Boston, an overtime loss in New Jersey, both 3-2 finals. The Preds battled back to get a point in Boston, couldn't finish things off in New Jersey. Some good hockey, some so-so hockey, but the Preds are still right in the thick of things right now. Max, what say you through these 2 games on this road trip thus far?
Well, the first thing on my mind this week, Brooks, is everybody back in Nashville with all the snow and the ice storm and the winter weather. And we feel bad that we're not there to help you guys out. It's probably for the best that the Preds are on the road, since home games probably not a good idea this week. We are really thinking of everybody. A lot of folks in our team traveling party, players, our fellow broadcasters, are all trying to get their families situated back home, dealing with the same things that you guys are. So we hope that folks have been able to watch or listen to the Preds games this week to get a little bit of normal in their lives during what's been a really, really tough time. And I don't know, I almost feel guilty that we're away, but our friends back at Bridgestone are helping out all weekend, opening up the arena to fans to get some food to warm up. And it's really a terrible situation. And I wish we were there to be able to help out, but like I said, it's probably for the best that we're not there. I know that's not what you asked me, but that's what I'm thinking about more than anything.
Yeah, no, well said. That's a good point. Yeah, it's been a tough week from that standpoint to see some of the images back home. And yeah, you said it, a lot of people in our traveling party who have to be here for work away from their families and dealing with that sort of thing. So yeah, like Max said, we hope that you've been able to watch, listen to the games. Hopefully you're able to hear this podcast at some point as well and give you a little reprieve to what's been going on here. So yeah, Max, on the hockey side of things, what do you think? What have been some of your observations as we've gone through Boston and New Jersey so far and getting ready to play the Islanders on Saturday?
Yeah, 2 different games with the same result that got there in very different ways, both 3-2 overtime losses for the Preds. In Boston on Tuesday, they never led. They came back to tie the game twice. Roman Josi scored a power play goal to cut it to 2-1 at the end of the second, and then Nick Blankenburg tied the game in the third. Preds got to overtime, didn't touch the puck in OT. David Pastrnak scored 15 seconds in, lost 3-2 in overtime. Then Thursday night against the Devils, they led 1-0 early on. They led 2-1. Devils tied it, forced OT, and again in the first minute of overtime, they give up a goal. So I think both solid efforts from the Preds. Like the overtime games have been so good for the Preds recently. They started the season 0-4 in overtime. Then they won 4 3-on-3 overtime games in a row, and now they've lost 2 back-to-back. So I don't know. Can you gripe about the way the overtime has gone? I never like to be the one to do that. But I think it was 2 solid showings on the road. You really felt like those were winnable games as well. But with the Preds fighting for every point, those overtime loss points do mean something, Kara.
Definitely, Max. And right now, with 4 games before the Olympic break, they are trying as hard as they can to string something together. So they have a little bit of confidence going into the break. And we're going to hear from Luke Evangelista coming up in the show. But he talked about the importance of this stretch of hockey, especially with the trade deadline looming. So, Brooks, I think we know that going back, the Preds wish there was 1 or 2 games where, hey, they might need those extra points, because now the question remains, are they buying? Are they selling? What's happening? And are people going to be able to enjoy their vacation with the trade deadline right around the corner?
No, 100%. Yeah. So there's, you talk about wanting to collect as many points as possible, and they've gotten 2 on this trip so far, both in overtime. I mean, there's no consolation prizes, and obviously you want wins, but I don't know. I've always looked at it as if you can go on the road and get half of the available points, like, that's still not a bad deal, and Michael McCarron said essentially that as much on Thursday night after the loss in New Jersey, that we're still essentially 500 on the trip. You've gotten 2 points, and the win the week mantra is still very much alive. That's what the Predators, we've heard it for, it feels like months now, talk about winning the week, right? And if they can get 2 games, 3 games, depending on how the week goes, then they're going to put themselves in a pretty good position. So that win the week mantra is still very much in play as they head on to Long Island on Saturday night to face Matthew Schaefer and the Islanders. But you mentioned it, Kara, as well, as only 4 games to go before the Olympic break. There's a little, you mentioned the trade deadline there. So there is a roster freeze during the Olympic break. And there's been some talk around the league, like, is that February 4th when the roster freeze starts leading into the Olympic break? Will that be kind of like a miniature trade deadline? And, we've heard Barry Trotz say on 1025 The Game recently that, there's obviously some tough decisions to make, but maybe not so much before the Olympic break. I think it's going to be very interesting. A lot of teams in different positions coming out of the Olympic break. What do they do, Max, in those few games where all of a sudden you've only got a few games to make a decision? Which direction is your club going? And for the Predators, again, playing some good hockey still. Like Andrew Brunette said it Thursday night, he said that was a pretty good road game. And you get to overtime and it can go either way. I don't know what anybody is supposed to do about Nico Hischier streaking down the wing and a perfectly placed shot to beat Justus Annunen on Thursday night in New Jersey. But yeah, a lot of interesting hockey coming up. And again, it feels like a long way away, the trade deadline. It's not till March. We're still in January right now. But considering the amount of actual NHL games until we get to that point, certainly some interesting decisions to come all around the NHL.
Yeah, just because they're 3 weeks without a game doesn't mean the trade deadline isn't still on the first Friday of March. It is. It's still on Friday, March 6th. So the Preds really don't play a ton between now and then. They've got the 4 remaining games before the trade deadline and then 5 games in 8 days coming out of it between the end of the Olympics and the start of the time of the deadline on Friday, March 6th. So Kara, it's a long spread of time with not a lot of games, and every team is fighting for the same thing. We see it every night, no matter who the Preds are playing.
Yeah, and I'm surprised neither of you hit the only 28 days in February, so we already know how fast that month is going to fly by. But Brooks, I have to go back to your mantra of what Bruno has expressed all year. It's win the week, and as we record here on January 30th, let's go back to last week because the Preds were winning that week. The captain, Roman Josi, playing in his 1,000th career game. They come back for a major win against Ottawa after being down 3 goals. Brooks, you've been with the team for, I think, 1 or 2 seasons longer than I. So Max and I talked about this on Smashville Live. McCarron and Cole Smith are the 4th and 5th longest tenured Preds. Roman Josi, number 1. So you've been with him the longest. What was it like for you watching the captain, number 59, playing his 1,000th game?
Special. Looking back, we had some cool photos of game 1 and then every 100, so on and so forth. And just looking at the photos, I think I've been here since at least 300, maybe a little bit earlier than that. But yeah, it was really great. Not only the game itself, and Kara, I want to ask you about what you did during that game in a minute, but the Thursday game, and then he's honored before the game on Saturday against Utah, where they played the tribute video, and he receives his silver stick for the 1,000 game mark. And he was getting a little emotional watching that video. I was getting a little emotional watching that video, honestly, because you mentioned it, like, you're around these guys pretty much every day during the hockey season. And, the games go by and there's 82 a year and you're in the grind and you're in the midst of it. And all of a sudden, 1,000 games, and you look back on it and you think, wow, there have been some amazing moments and some of the coolest moments, selfishly, of my career. And for Roman's career as well, it's just been such a pleasure to cover him. I think one of my favorite things I've ever been able to do is to write a story on him when he won the Norris Trophy in 2020. And I didn't talk to him for it, but I talked to everybody else, his wife, his parents, his brother, former coaches, teammates. Uh, that was so cool to be a part of that. And then just leading up to this as well, I mentioned it last week again, but the chance to talk to guys like Shea Weber and Dante Fabro and Ryan Ellis, guys that have played a lot of minutes over those 1,000 games with Roman Josi, and just to get a sense of, what he meant to them on the ice. And we see that, right? Everybody sees him on the ice and they know what he means to the franchise, but off the ice is just as important. And it was just such a pleasure to be able to chronicle that a little bit and play such a small role in it. But really a special weekend. And I know, Kara, you got a chance to speak with his dad, Peter Yossi, who we've gotten to know over the years from the father's trips. And what was that like, just to be able to spend a little bit of time with his family on an occasion like that?
Yeah, it was so special to go up into the suite and be there with Luca and Ivy, Roman's two kids. His wife Ellie was there, but his family was there, his mom and his dad. And I did have a chance to talk to Peter. And one thing that's always been known is Peter sets the alarm and wakes up first thing in the morning to watch Roman's games, being back home in Switzerland. And I said, "Do you still wake up first thing in the morning?" And he goes, "Maybe not all 1,000, but I've probably watched 950." But it was really neat to
Wow.
to go back and ask about, Roman being 16 years old playing in Bern, Switzerland. What was it like now watching him playing his 1,000th game? And you could just see how proud his dad was. And Brooks, you mentioned it, catching up with some of his former teammates. I just hearing from all the guys he used to play with. I mean, Hal Gill was one of his first D partners, and Hal said he remembered Roman drinking chocolate milk after the game. And that's something that stuck with the fans because before that night, we saw people holding up signs in the arena asking Roman if he wanted a chocolate milk. So just to see his transformation, but Max, he is such a good guy, and I think it goes back to this quote from Scott Hartnell that says he's an NHL player, but he's also a sweetheart, and I think that just exactly encapsulates who the captain is.
Yeah, it was a celebration of epic Smashville proportions. And honestly, I think it was one of the best regular season games in Preds history, guys. Like, with all of the pageantry. My favorite moment was warm-ups, everybody coming out in number 59 with their captain's
Yeah.
patches on. Even the goalies had the captain's patches on and Yossi on their nameplates. So that was awesome, like an incredible way to start the game. And then from there, it's kind of a normal game until it's not, and it's a special comeback night for Steven Stamkos, the game-winning goal for the hat trick with a minute 13 left. I mean, Brooks, that's got to be up there, best Preds games of Yossi's tenure regular season, right?
Yeah, no, it was up there. And we talked about that after the game Thursday and the next day as well. Like, yes, it would have been great, all the pomp and circumstance of everything that comes with a milestone like that. But if you lose the game, there's just a little, it's not as good, right? Like, you've got to win that game. And to not only win it, but to do it scoring 5 unanswered after you went down in a 3-0 hole, the hat trick from Steven Stamkos, you could tell how much the guys wanted to win it for him. That was what Andrew Brunette said in the post game, that he's like, I've been a part of a lot of these, and this one is up there as probably the most special 1,000th game milestone that he's been a part of. I loved what Brunette said in the morning too. He got asked about, what do you remember about his 1,000th game as a player? He did that obviously when he was a player in the NHL, and he said it kind of felt like an obituary because all these people are saying all these nice things about you, and you kind of just want to get the day over with. And so Roman that morning kind of made it a point. He's like, yeah, I'm really trying to take it all in. And I think he was able to do that. And again, the win just makes it everything even better than it already is. And I wanted to play this clip of Roman about what he'll remember most about that night.
Um, Good question. I don't know. I think just the whole day. You know, just the whole day is pretty special. Obviously, having my family, my kids in here before the game was really cool, and just being around the teammates and I think just all the love you get all day is it's pretty special, and like I said, I'm so grateful. To be able to play here for so long, and I'll remember a lot of things. There's a lot of cool moments today.
So there you hear the captain. It was a fantastic moment. And, in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's something you look back on even more so when you're done playing and appreciate it even more. But I think he was able to really take it in, to have his kids there in the room with him reading the lineup before the game. That's always such a special moment. And then just the way that Thursday night played out and into the celebration on Saturday pregame. It was great. And I selfishly want to give a shout out to the rest of our content team as well, with the videos and the things that appeared on social. And we did a lot, and it was really cool to see it all get out into the open, and to have the guys just be a part of everything that comes with a moment like this. So we hope you, the fans, appreciated everything that came along with that, and were able to celebrate Roman in your own way. But yeah, what a moment for the captain, what a moment for the franchise, and certainly very well deserved for number 59, who again, as Scott Hartnell said, he's a sweetheart. I think he ranks very highly on any of us that get the chance to cover the team. We all love talking to Roman, so hats off to the captain.
Definitely. And like Steven Stamkos said afterwards, those milestones are always a little bit sweeter when you get 2 points with it.
The first Pred ever 1,000 games, all for us. Next in line, Philip Forsberg, 167 away. So get ready in a couple years for that. But for now, Roman Josi skates alone.
That he does. And he's still just so good looking too, right? That doesn't hurt either. I think we're all a little bit jealous. But again, congrats to number 59. Speaking of good looking, up next, we'll chat with Luke Evangelista, number 77 in your program's number one in your heart. That is coming up next on the Predators Official Podcast here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back to the Predators Official Podcast here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming on YouTube and your favorite platforms. I'm Brooks Bratton, alongside my friends Max Hers and Kara Hammer. We are pleased to be joined now by number 77 Predators forward, Luke Evangelista. We've all got similar backgrounds except for Kara, but the other three of us are on Long Island as the Preds prepare to play the Islanders on Saturday night. But Luke, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course, it's a pleasure. And we've all got some questions for you, hard-hitting stuff here. So I want to ask you first off, we're over halfway through the season, 52 games so far for you, 38 points, including 31 assists. How are you feeling about your game to this juncture?
Yeah, I felt pretty good. I mean, yeah, it's been a good start to the season. I think obviously this was kind of a big year for me. Coming off of last year, I kind of want to have a bounce back year personally, and I think just as the whole squad, we had something to prove this year. Personally had something to prove this year. So it's been nice to kind of have that start. Obviously, feeling a little more confidence and kind of finding my stride and being able to take that next step in terms of the production, and the opportunity's been great. I mean, I get to play with some great players. I'm playing with Phil, Factor, Stammer, those kind of guys. So they make it easy out there for you. They're great line mates, and it's been great playing with them. I think we've found a little chemistry, and like I said, have just been able to take that next step production wise. So yeah, it's been good. But you just when that confidence comes, you gotta stick with it and keep rolling with it. So yeah, just looking to do that.
Luke, what has it meant for you to claim and solidify your spot in the top 6 this season?
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely one of my, personal goals coming into this season. Just to be a guy that, is relied upon in that top 6 and, offensively, but it also comes with that, the defensive responsibilities. I think that's a big part of, when you're playing with Factor and Phil and Stammer, like I said, you're going to be line matched against the other teams, top end guys, whether it's the D-man or the forward lines are going to be matched against some pretty elite players. So you got to make sure, you're taking care of your defensive responsibilities as well as, try and provide that offensive spark for the team. So I think that's been a good learning curve for me, just making sure I'm solid in all 3 zones, and, the staff can rely on me late in games and against top players. So that's all part of playing the top 6. It's not, just the offensive production. It's kind of being responsible in every sense of the game. So that's been a good learning curve for me, and I've had a ton of fun with it so far this year.
It's Speaking of Stamkos, he called you the Dishin magician. I mean, what are your thoughts on that moniker as you just talked about getting the chance to play with him?
Yeah, that's pretty funny. That's pretty special. That's one of those ones where it's like, in the moment, you just have a laugh about it, and then you go home that night and you're like, holy crap, like Steven Stamkos just said that to me. Like, I watched him growing up. He's a legend. The guy's got 600 goals, 1,200 points, like, and he's like coming up with those nicknames for me. Like, it's one of those things where you go home at night and you kind of try and soak that in, because if you told, 6-year-old Luke that he'd be line mates with Steven Stamkos, or that Steven Stamkos would be calling him the Dish Magician, like, I would have a field day with that. So, yeah, those are the kind of memories that, that last a long time. You just try and soak that stuff in throughout your playing career.
Luke, for you especially as well, you've got a ton of assists, but your goal against Toronto earlier this season, hockey night in Canada, Saturday night at Bridgestone, what do you remember about that moment, and what were some of the reactions you got afterward? And you got another hockey night towel after that, right?
That's right. I got two now. Yeah, that's right.
Nice.
That's right. That's a pretty special goal. Just in terms of, being a Toronto kid. I grew up watching the Leafs. I was going to games. Um, it's hockey night in Canada that Saturday night, and I had a bunch of buddies and family, texting me after the game, telling me that they were watching. And yeah, I think you could just tell from that goal, the celebration, what a rush that was. I kind of blacked out there and was losing my mind for a second. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you dream of as a kid. You're playing your hometown team. Like you said, hockey night in Canada, your friends and family back home are going to be tuning in. So yeah, those ones are special for sure. That was a really cool memory. Probably one of my favorite goals in my career.
Well, speaking of growing up in Toronto, I think 6-year-old Luke was wearing a Luke Schenn jersey back in the day. What did you like about him so much as a player?
Yeah, so the reason I got his jersey actually had nothing to do with him as a player. It was more just a Toronto Maple Leaf with the name Luke. I was like, yeah, that'll do it for me. Yeah, one Christmas my parents got me a Luke Schenn jersey, and yeah, kind of like what I suggested with Stammer. Like, I think being able to play with him, like, that was my first NHL jersey, and years later we end up being teammates. Like, that's one of those things, you try and soak in. And I remember telling my mom that he was having me over for dinner, and we ended up playing mini six, me, him, and his two boys for a couple hours after dinner. And it's like same kind of thing, like what I said. It's like, if you told a 7-year-old Luke that he was gonna be playing mini six with Luke Schenn, you'd be like, get out of here. It's like, so it's like, that's what the hockey world brings. It's those kind of memories, those connections. I've been super grateful to play with some guys like that, like, some legends of the game, Stammer, Schenner, my first jersey. So yeah, super cool memories. I'm super grateful to have had those guys as teammates.
Luke, you're also another guy kind of along those lines, Ryan O'Reilly. You're often one of the last guys off the ice after practice, and so is Factor. I guess, what are you guys working on when you're out there that long? And what has your relationship with him been like as you've seen it evolve over the last couple of years?
Yeah. I mean, every time I get asked about Factor, I always say I could sit here and talk, for hours about Factor. What a great person and teammate he is. Um, in terms of what we're working on after practice, he's literally like having another coach out there on the ice. Like, he's got so much knowledge. He's got so many drills. Like, it's not one specific thing we're working on. Like, sometimes we're working on different puck touches. Sometimes we're working on our releases, deflections. Like, it's a whole mixed bag sort of stuff that he's got drills for after practice for us. And I think early on, like, when you're teammates with him, you kind of realize, like, okay, like, this is a guy, like, you want to follow. Like he's a good leader. He's a good role model. Like, follow in his footsteps, and your game's gonna transition. And yeah, I just think our relationship, like I said, he's just got so much knowledge and experience, and he's been so good to, as a teammate for all of us. I think for us young guys, like, you see after practice, like, it's 5-6 young guys, and him just, doing his drills. Like, we all kind of, look up to him in that sense. And he's all playing with him now too. Like he's always talking to me on the bench. We're always talking about the game. Like, he's always got, those little tips and tricks, for us to work off of. So he's been a fantastic teammate. Great line mate. I mean, you can't ask for much more in teammates. So it's been a pleasure to play with him.
Luke, we talk about you coming up through and seeing all these veterans. So many of the guys that you played with as a teenager are in the NHL now too. What's it like seeing them and matching up against some of your closest friends from junior, like Connor McMichael on the Caps, Alec Regula on the Oilers, who we've all seen recently?
Yeah, it's funny. It's definitely funny, when you're looking at the lineup sheet pre-game and you see, old teammates. I've had, there have been guys I've been playing against since I was like 7, 8 years old now that we're all playing together in the NHL. So it's been a cool road to this point, I guess you could say. There's guys that, like you said, I played in junior with, I played minor hockey against or with, I train with in the summer. It's kind of cool, like, building those connections and those relationships around the league. And, just following those guys in their own path. Everyone's rooting for each other. You meet so many great people in hockey, as I've said. A bunch of easy guys to root for. And like you said, like McMichael, I lived with in junior for 3 years. He was great to me, when we were living together. And, early on in junior, I was going through a hard time, and he had kind of been in my shoes the year before. And, so, it's that kind of stuff that you remember. You always want to cheer for those guys. And even, former teammates in the NHL, like Stasny when we play Edmonton, like another great human being, you're always cheering for those guys. So, yeah, it's been fun to follow along in their careers and their paths. And, you always want to cheer for good people. So you're always happy for them.
So, Luke, what has impressed you most about your team this season? Obviously, it didn't start off the way you wanted to, but you guys are in the hunt. What, I guess, kind of collectively has allowed your group to be able to find their game and obviously still very much in it here as we approach the Olympic break?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is just the resiliency of the group. Like you said, it wasn't an ideal start again, and it kind of it creeps into the back of your mind like, oh boy, like maybe this is starting to feel like last year a little bit. But I think for us to like kind of bounce back from that and not give into that, and get the train back on the tracks, get the boat back in the water, and just start paddling the right way. I think we've made tremendous ground, and like I said, we're still not at our goal yet. We're not quite in that playoff spot that we're gunning for. So we still got some room to go. But I think just to claw back into this, to be in this situation right now, be in the fight. I think you see it in games too. I think numerous times, we've gone down early, which is not ideal. It's something we're definitely trying to work on. But I think just the ability to battle back and find ways to scrap out points, get 2 points. That Ottawa game at home a couple weeks ago comes to mind. Just that feeling you have from clawing back as a group and getting those points. Like I think that's something to really build off of. So I think that resiliency is kind of the first thing that comes to mind.
I know the team is trying to end on a strong note before you guys head into the Olympic break, but what are your plans for the break? And, what are you guys talking about as you hit this stretch of the season?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it a few times. I think these last handful of games are really important for us going into the break because, you come back from the break and I think it's like only 2 or 3 games until the trade deadline when, stuff really starts going down. So our job and our goal is to put ourselves in the best position possible going into that, be as close in the fight as possible, be right in the gunning for that spot. So it is a crucial time of the year for us. I think we all understand that. We're trying to scrap out points as best as we can. And like I said, stay in that fight so that, when we come out on the other side of that break, we're in a spot where we're still battling. We're not out of it. And yeah, we leave ourselves in a spot where we can still make the playoffs and have that belief.
Luke, thanks for doing this. Keep working hard these last few games.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
That's Preds winger Luke Evangelista, back with more after this on the Predators Official Podcast. Welcome back to the Predators Official Podcast here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, Nashville Predators YouTube, and your preferred podcast platforms. My name is Max Hers from Preds Radio, along with my two best friends in the universe, except no substitutes, Kara Hammer from Predators TV and Brooks Bratton from NashvillePredators.com. Thanks to the pretty boy Luke Evangelista for joining us in the last segment. Always fun to talk to him about everything going on in his hockey universe. And I just love the way that he understands his place. He loves being around these veterans. He knows he's the young guy. He knows that every day is a blessing. And the reverse side of it is he takes a lot of crap from his veteran teammates too. And boy, does he take it all in stride like an absolute champ.
I think the only thing we missed there, Max, was after we hosted Smashville Live, you asked about the Preds' best duos, and your number one choice was Cole Smith, Michael McCarron, but you had Bange and Blankenberg a close second. So we may have to do a little follow-up here and see if he thinks they're in second place here or if him and Blanks are actually number one.
Yeah, I really should have asked because, to be honest with you, they are my number one, but I wasn't going to say that while Cole Smith and Michael McCarron were around.
They're a little taller, a little bigger than you.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to save it for next time. Always leaving you guys hanging here on the POP. We have a couple of Milwaukee Admirals-related topics to talk about here in this segment. First up, the Predators made a transaction on Thursday morning. Fedor Svechkov, who had been in the NHL the entire season until then, sent back down to AHL Milwaukee. We had the chance to ask head coach Andrew Brunette in our pregame interview on Preds Radio about the reasoning and the timing of Svechkov going down.
Well, I think it's just a good opportunity for him to get some games in before the Olympic break. Play some big minutes, get some confidence back in his game, have the puck a lot more, feel better about it. He's been inconsistent for us this year. He's had some really good flashes of play, and then he just had trouble sustaining it. So I think it's a great opportunity as a young player. Go play big minutes, get on the power play, touch the puck, feel good, and we'll see him again here this year.
Brooks, it seems fair. What do you think about Brunette's explanation and the timing for Svechkov to go back?
Yeah, I don't know that anybody was overly surprised. It hasn't been an easy season for Svech. He made the team out of training camp, but it's been a struggle. I mean, 9 points in 47 games. You obviously hope for more. And, from a personal perspective, he's such a good kid. You don't want to see anybody, not doing well on the ice, but he needs to go down and get his game back. I mean, you heard Brunette say it, go down, play some big minutes, get some confidence, get on the power play. Because obviously he's a great player. We know that. We've seen flashes of that. But it just has not gelled this season so far at the NHL level. So I think this will be good for him. We've seen it with other guys too. They'll go down, come back up, and they're a whole new player, right? And so I this wasn't ideal. This wasn't part of the plan at the beginning of the season. But at this juncture, I think it's the right move. And again, we talked about in the first segment with the Olympic break coming up, and we've mentioned as well, there are certain guys that, if you want them to play in the AHL, you need to assign them beforehand. So perhaps they can spend the break down there playing. Well, it remains to be seen what will happen with Svechkov. But I do think, obviously, it was good that Brunette said at the end there as well, we'll see him again here this year. This is not something where we expect him to be banished for the rest of the season in Milwaukee. We certainly expect to see Fedor Svechkov at some point this season, and we'll be excited to see him back because we know that what he can do at this NHL level, and he's certainly got that in his game. So all the best to Svech as he heads back down there, and we'll look forward to seeing him back here and putting the puck in the net again sometime soon.
Well, the Olympic break piece of this, Brooks, is that Svechkov will still get his NHL mandated Olympic break. So that means if he is still with the Admirals by that time, he will not be able to play in 3 games on February 7th, February 14th, and February 15th. All 3 of those games are against Rockford. But he will still get his NHL CBA mandated bye week, which is the first 9 days of the Olympic break. If he is still in the AHL by then, he will be able to play in the AHL in the games starting February 18th and onward, if my understanding of the CBA is correct. But based on how long he had been in the NHL, which was as long as possible because he'd been in the league the entire season, the CBA guarantees him that NHL player time off, which, as we had talked about on last week's show, talking about Reed Schaefer, you can't just send everyone who is eligible to go to the AHL back to the AHL the day before the Olympic break, and nobody ever gets a break. So that's why those rules exist.
And guys have vacations planned too. You can't just wipe everybody out and say, no beach for you, which regardless of how your NHL season's been going, if you've played 47 games in the NHL, you deserve a little bit of a break. So yeah, good call out there. And we'll see how that plays out for Svetch.
Sticking with our friends up in Milwaukee, they played their first ever outdoor game in Milwaukee Admirals franchise history last week. And it wasn't just the first outdoor game for the Admirals ever. It was also the coldest professional outdoor hockey game in the history of America. So congrats to the Milwaukee Admirals, who won the coldest outdoor hockey game in the history of America, 3-2 in overtime against the Iowa Wild, -8 degrees Fahrenheit, breaking the previous record of -6 at the Winter Classic in Minnesota a few years ago, which was crazy cold. This game was in Hastings, Minnesota, at the Hockey Day in Minnesota rink. So it was the Iowa Wild, the Wild's affiliate, against the Milwaukee Admirals. And the Admirals came back to win 3-2. Zach LaRue scored the walk-off winner in overtime on a memorable day.
And our friend Aaron Sims, Admirals broadcaster, called the entire game outdoors. The Athletic did a cool profile on the event, but Aaron was saying that the setup, and they had kind of like a makeshift tent. The broadcast booth was taken up by TV folks. He's on the radio. And the tent that they had set up, he's like, I can't be in here. I can't even see out the window. It was so fogged up and it was blurry and couldn't see the numbers. So he had to step outside, and then it was so cold. There were generators failing that were running his equipment. He actually called the game on his cell phone for a period of time in the second period. But he's a champ. He got it in. He said he would do it again 100%. But I think you'll learn a few things of what works, what doesn't work. But the electric parka seemed to be doing wonders, because I don't know, Max, like you call games. I don't know. Would you want to be out there in -8 degrees? I feel like your jaw and your lips might freeze up a little bit.
Yeah, I've been outside before for some cold football games and some cold early season college baseball games with the windows open out of the press box. Definitely not -8, that's for sure. Maybe 20 or 30 was as low as I got. Yeah, I was listening to Aaron Sims call the game on Fox Sports Radio in Milwaukee for portions of it. First of all, if he was using his phone, it didn't sound like it. The audio quality was great. So props to all of our producers up there at the Admirals radio team for making that sound good in what was a crazy situation. He did a great job calling the game, sounded the same as he would inside, which is a major credit to Aaron. And then at the end of the game, I was listening to the post-game show, and it comes back, it says, time for your out-of-town scores on the Milwaukee Admirals post-game show. And the music is going, and Aaron just comes back and says, well, my computer is frozen, so no scores today. I'm like, yes, I love that so much. It was so cold. So the perfect way to sum it up. Hey, congrats to the Ads on the win. Ryder Ralston, Oasis Weisblatt, and Zach LaRue with the goals. Matt Murray in net. Go Ads, go.
Well done to the Ads. Well done to Aaron Sims. And best of luck to Svetch in Milwaukee. We will certainly see him back up here soon. We will be back in just a moment to wrap things up, bring you the Big E awesome person or persons of the week, and get to a couple of your questions. That's next here on the Preds Official Podcast on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Welcome back into the Predators Official Podcast. I'm Carrie Hammer, along with Max Hers and Brooks Bratton. And guys, we talked about it. Roman Josi, his 1,000th game, and what a special moment it was. So our Big E, awesome person of the week, is going out to not only Roman, but the entire Josi family, because how cute were Luca and Ivy and sitting on their mom Ellie's lap saying, go number 59. So shout out to Roman's parents who flew all the way over from Switzerland. His brother was here. It takes a whole family. It takes a whole village to get to 1,000 games. So our Big E, awesome person of the week, Roman Josi and family. Max?
My addendum to that award, Kara, is the day of his 1000th game, Thursday afternoon, I went on the Chasing Big Joe radio show, and Big Joe and Nick Frazier were doing the show in the Omni at Bar Lines, great friends of Bridgestone Arena and of 102.5 The Game. So I'm on the show for, I think, half an hour, 45 minutes, talking about Roman Josi the entire time. I take my headset off at the end of the segment, and I look to the right, and here comes Roman's dad walking right by. And his dad, brother, and sister-in-law are eating in Bar Lines right around the corner from where we were, and presumably heard the entire segment. But don't worry, I was very complimentary, as usual, especially on such a special day. But yeah, hey, the Yosis are everywhere is the moral of the story.
You're never sure. You better look over your shoulder when you're thinking of saying something bad about Roman. But who says anything bad about Roman? Come on. No, that's a good way to wrap up the Yossi love. Which again, what a moment it was. What a pleasure it was to be around and just to be a part of that. So, Max, I want to ask you, we got a couple questions in the mailbag, which maybe you can shed a little light on this, or if not, we can do some more research. But Rick mentioned that Max talked about what gifts the Preds players were getting Roman for his 1000th game. He was wondering who on the team decides what they are getting. Is it a committee? Is it players who reach that milestone? I know you mentioned it last week, some of the gifts, but do you have any more insights in that regard, or do we need to do some research?
Well, Ryan O'Reilly was kind enough to share on the morning of that the first two gifts that the team got together and bought for Roman Josi were a limited edition custom watch by Swiss watchmaker Norcane, which Roman Josi endorses, and they got them to commission a special watch for him for 1,000 games. So that was a very fitting one. And then also, since Roman is a huge tennis fan, they got him and his family VIP tickets for the U.S. Open coming up at the end of this summer. So those were the first two gifts. Ryan O'Reilly says there will be more that are coming at a more formal team get-together, which I don't believe has happened yet. It maybe was scheduled for last weekend, but if it was scheduled for last weekend, it didn't happen because of the snow. So I think the leadership group, minus Josi, of course, who is the recipient, probably organizes that. And I don't know who's in charge of collecting money now. It was always Colton Sissons running the Kangaroo Court forever, and obviously Colton Sissons no longer on the Preds. So, Rick, that is the best answer I can give you, and we'll see if we find out what the rest of the gifts are at some point down the road. But 1,000 games, you earn yourself some good presents.
We do know that he got a silver stick from the presentation, and Ivy and Luca also got little miniature silver sticks.
Yeah.
So don't forget the kids. You can't be giving dad all the presents. The kids have to get something. So good for them to get involved in the gift giving there. Tia said, while watching the game against Boston, I thought of a conversation my dad and I had recently about why when players leave the game due to injury, the team cannot then dress one of their healthy scratches to take their place. And I was curious about your overall take on the topic. It's honestly a good question. I think, correct me if I'm wrong. So football, someone gets hurt, someone else can come in. Baseball, someone else comes in. Basketball, someone else people can come off the bench, right? So I think in that regard, it's with hockey, obviously there's people coming off the bench, but you're not dressing one of your healthy scratches. I don't know. I guess I'm kind of indifferent to it. I think the tough thing about that is oftentimes, especially if like somebody were to get hurt later in the game, the healthy scratches are often already showered and dressed and they're up in the press box watching the game. So you can't just immediately have a guy jump on the ice. They're not sitting there ready to come in, even if that was an option. So I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? I think it makes for some cool stories sometimes. Like if a guy does get hurt during a game, like, oh, you were down to 11 forwards or 10 forwards or 5 defensemen. How did you rally and push through that? It kind of makes for a cool story sometimes in that regard. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Should players be allowed to be dressed if they're a healthy scratch after the fact?
I think it's an interesting topic, especially when we're talking about forwards and defensemen. And then you look at the E-Bug situation. I mean, you already only have one backup goalie who has not warmed up, not played, sometimes just thrown right into the situation. He may have even played the night before back on the ice. But then you have Joe Schmo down the street who's playing in his boys league hockey game, who might be the e-bug who comes in. But I think they have made some adjustments there, right? I believe now teams can travel an e-bug. Am I correct here, or am I just making something up that I maybe read online? Next season. See? I know a little bit about what I'm talking about here.
That'll be a thing. No, you're right. That'll be a thing next season. And that's kind of to eliminate kind of that, which again makes for some great stories. The e-bugs. We all remember David Ayers with the Maple Leafs, who is the Maple Leafs e-bug, came in for the Hurricanes. He's essentially a Zamboni driver a few years ago, came in, won the game. I'm thinking of another gentleman in Chicago, I think was an accountant by day, ended up being the e-bug by night. Another guy I actually went to high school with, Parker Milner, who was a national champion at Boston College, flew out to Anaheim just this season to be the backup for the Washington Capitals for a game, and got that rookie lap and everything that comes with that. Didn't get into the game, but still got that experience. Regardless, the league is kind of trying to eliminate that. So yes, they are going to start letting someone essentially be a full-time e-bug, but practice with the team, travel with the team. So you, especially on the road, you eliminate the opportunity for someone who, for example, somebody who lives here on Long Island all of a sudden comes in, you don't know the guy, he's coming in cold, that sort of thing. You can have a guy with your club, and that's kind of the reasoning behind that, is just to have someone who's around all the time. But I'm going to kind of miss the e-bug stories because I don't think we're going to really get them anymore. But no, that's a good point, and that's something else that the league has definitely thought of. But I don't know, I feel like you dress 20 guys a game, 18 skaters, 12 forwards, 6 defensemen. That's kind of what you get. And Tia has, as a follow-up, she said, while listening to Willie and Mace, they briefly mentioned one of the defensemen possibly filling in as a forward. Is this allowed, or is it a situational based scenario? So you can, for sure. We've seen it rarely, but I think years ago we saw Tony Botetto play wing a little bit. We've seen Calle Yarncroke, former Preds forward, go back as a defenseman just because he's such a smart player and is capable of doing that. Not all guys are capable of that. I think that's another thing, is that, sure, I mean, in a pinch, surely somebody could fill in, but no offense to most of the forwards, but I don't think you want to throw them back there as a defenseman. It's a little bit different if you're not doing it every night. So yes, that is allowed, but it's not ideal.
Well, we've seen Nick Blankenburg do it this year. He played a little bit of even strength forward early in the season, and he's played a ton of penalty kill forward. The Preds have killed a lot of penalties with 3 defensemen and 1 forward on the ice, and it's been fun to watch. It's kind of like this little oddity, and Blankenburg is great at it because he can use the best pieces of his defenseman game and also some of the forward game. He was a forward for the first 18, 19 years of his life before he got to college hockey and was moved to defenseman. So anyone can play wherever they want. It's always fun to see guys come out of the penalty box and try and fit in at the opposite position. So I think there are actually probably more guys who could do it than get a chance to do it. But I mean, you're probably not NHL level at the other position. But no, anybody can go wherever they want as long as they're not offside.
Exactly. Yeah, stay on side, Nick Blankenburg. And with that, we thank you for listening to another edition of the Preds Official Podcast and watching us on YouTube, of course. For Kara Hammer and Max Hers, I am Brooks Bratton. 4 more games to go before the Olympic break. We will be there to bring you all of the happenings on this podcast and all over Preds channels. You can watch us, you can listen to us, and enjoy the hockey. We'll be back next week with one final episode before the Olympic break. Until then, stay safe, stay warm, and we will talk to you soon.